still random people every day. I think you guys have a couple of days where you can train them to do it. Jeff, you tackle this, you know, I'm just like running between all of them myself. Hey, there he is, one of my top 3 Facebook friends of 2021. Oh, to find this room? Yeah, I would have done that too, except that it's all easy. Happy New Year to you. Yeah, I don't know if you saw it. I got one of those Facebook things. They're like, here is your closest friend for 2021. It was me and Chelsea from my work, and then Marcus Lara. You're my #1 friend. I did.
You all hear me all right? Sound check? All right, good afternoon. Thanks for being here. The purpose of this press release is to announce charges against 3 defendants responsible for the shooting at Auburn High School yesterday afternoon. To my left, your right, is Mayor Tom McNamara, City of Rockford. To my right, your left, is Chief Carla, Rockford Police Department. First, I'll identify the individuals responsible and also identify the charges and the consequences of those charges. Secondly, I'll discuss the facts. And lastly, I'll talk about the transfer to adult court for 2 of the defendants. Nyreek Williams, age 16, and Fraquan Wright are charged as follows: 2 counts of attempt murder, 2 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm, and 2 counts of aggravated battery with a firearm on school grounds. The reason there are 2 counts is there are 2 victims. The juvenile male was arrested on related charges. As alleged, and as to Williams and Wright, attempt murder is a Class X felony punishable by 26 to 50 years. Aggravated battery with a firearm is a Class X felony punishable by 6 to 30 years. And the aggravated battery with a firearm on school grounds is a Class X felony punishable by 15 to 30 years. If they were convicted and sentenced, they would serve 85% of those sentences. The juvenile male is subject to different sentencing consequences pursuant to the Juvenile Court Act. The charges against the defendants are merely allegations, and each are presumed innocent until and unless proven guilty in a court of law. Williams and Wright were in court this afternoon, and their bonds were set at $1 million. Their next court date is February 8th at 9 a.m. in front of Judge McGraw.
You mentioned their first names again, Williams and Wright?
Sure. So as a reminder, you will get the press release,
Right,
which will have the names and the spelling, but I'm happy to say them again. Nyreek Williams. Williams is common spelling. He's 16. Fraquan Wright, 17. And Wright is W-R-I-G-H-T. On January 4th at approximately 1 p.m., 2 students at Auburn High School were sitting in the parking lot at Auburn High School in a dark sedan with tinted windows. NJ, a juvenile female, was sitting in the driver's seat, and JF was in the passenger seat. At approximately 1 p.m., a tan Buick LaCrosse with Wisconsin license plates entered the parking lot and passed by the dark sedan twice. After it passed the second time, the tan Buick stopped behind the dark sedan. At that time, a black male wearing a puffy black jacket with letters on the front side of the coat, black pants, black shoes, and wearing a black and gray mask, a gator-type mask, exited the rear driver's side of the tan Buick. He was holding a handgun. Through the investigation, this individual was identified as Nyreek Williams. Next, a black male wearing a black hoodie, black mask, multicolored red underwear, teal socks, and retro Jordan 4 shoes exited the front passenger side of the tan Buick. He was also holding a handgun. Through the investigation, this individual was identified as Fraquan Wright. Williams and Wright approached the sedan from the rear passenger side. Williams approached the dark sedan first and, raising the gun to the passenger side window, fired the weapon into the dark sedan. Wright approached second and fired into the passenger side of the dark sedan. Williams and Wright then ran back to the tan Buick. Williams got into the rear driver's side seat, and Wright got into the front passenger seat. The driver of the tan Buick was a light-skinned black male juvenile. He did not exit the vehicle during the shooting. The above facts are known primarily because of the video footage provided by Auburn High School. After the shots were fired, NJ quickly exited the vehicle and ran east. At some point during the incident, she was shot in the leg. JF, the juvenile in the passenger seat, was also shot. He stayed in the vehicle and attempted to drive away, but stopped in the parking lot. NJ returned to the car and called 911. 5 spent 9mm casings were recovered at the scene. Approximately 10 minutes later, a Rockford police officer located the tan Buick traveling eastbound near 1200 Harrison Avenue. They were traveling at a high rate of speed, and that officer attempted to stop the vehicle. The car crashed at the dead end of Lapey Street, L-A-P-E-Y. The officer observed 3 black males exit the car and run southeast. The juvenile male was found in the area of 2900 Hanson Street. He wasn't wearing any pants or shoes. His clothing was located behind 2929 11th Street. Officers conducted a canine-assisted track for the other 2 suspects. Williams and Wright were located shortly thereafter, hiding in a garage at 2906 Lapey Street. Williams was wearing the same jacket that was shown in the video, a Columbia brand puffy black jacket. Wright was also wearing identical clothing to that seen in the video, a black hoodie, black mask, multicolored red underwear, teal socks, and retro Jordan 4 shoes. A handgun was found in the garage where they were hiding. A handgun with no serial number was also found on the driver's side floorboard of the tan Buick. The tan Buick had been reported stolen out of Janesville, Wisconsin. Pursuant to Illinois law, Williams, who was 16, and Wright, who was 17, are not considered delinquent minors. So more specifically, pursuant to Illinois law, a minor 16 or older at the time of the offense who was charged with aggravated battery with a firearm is not considered a delinquent minor and thus is prosecuted as an adult. So sometimes you'll hear it's an automatic transfer to adult court. It's not exactly correct. Technically, they're not even considered delinquent minors because of the charges. In addition, by way of background, back in 2016, this law was changed by the Illinois legislature to limit the amount of cases where an automatic transfer would occur. So to carry this further, attempt murder is not an automatic transfer charge. Aggravated battery with a firearm is. The juvenile male is not automatically transferred to adult court, so it's my discretion. And I have the option to file a motion seeking to have the juvenile prosecuted as an adult. The juvenile judge then makes the final determination of whether he will be charged as an adult. I haven't made that decision yet, and we'll decide that in the upcoming weeks after a thorough review of the facts, law, and history of the juvenile. Again, the charges against the defendants are merely allegations, and each are presumed innocent until and unless proven guilty in a court of law. I will take questions, and before the mayor and the chief come to the podium, I wanted to thank the Rockford Police Department for their efforts in this investigation. I also want to thank RPS 205 and more specifically the staff at Auburn High School for their cooperation. Further, my heart and thoughts go out to the victims in this case And especially when a school's involved, it really is the ripples in a pond. It goes beyond those two victims. It goes to all the students and staff at Auburn High School, the kids at the middle school and grade schools who are expecting to go to Auburn High School. And really, it's something that affects certainly our entire community. Lastly, this is an ongoing investigation. If anyone has any information related to these crimes, they should contact the Rockford Police Department. With that, I'll call up Chief Red.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me be clear in my statement that I take no pleasure in standing before you today. We are here because the juvenile violent crime has gotten completely out of control. I made a cry for a call to action yesterday, and very thankful for those community members that have stepped up and reached out, and they want to know how they can get involved and help, essentially, if you will, fill the gaps that have definitely been identified. Today, I definitely want to make a statement to the parents. Make it your business to get involved with your kids. Your kids don't have any business without you. You should know what's going on in your kids' lives. When your hairs start to stand up on the back of your neck and you start to question what it is your kids may be involved in, you need to start digging a little deeper. When their friends start to change and they start to move differently and act differently, that should be a telltale sign that there's something going on. And as a parent, you should want to know what that is. As a parent myself, I come from the perspective that I'd much rather have those parents step up and raise their kids as opposed to the system raising their kids. So you just have to get involved. It's not okay to claim ignorance and not know what it is that your kids are involved in. And as a parent, I get it that you want to believe your kids when they make a statement to you and say, oh no, I didn't know anything about that. But rest assured, when you start hearing from other sources, you better check and see what little Johnny is doing. You really need to look into that. I stand firm in saying, I stated yesterday that I believe this is an isolated incident. It was not the random gunfire that just took place at large by any means. I believe our perpetrators were very intentional in regards to who they were going after in the shooting incident that took place yesterday. We have taken the steps to set up an email address for those. If you're affiliated with an organization, with a church, or just you yourself as a good person want to help fill the gaps, if you will, by all means, there's been an email address that has been set up where you can reach out and we will start that correspondence with you as well. That email address is fillthegap@rockfordil.gov. Once again, that email address is fillthegap@rockfordil.gov. And once again, it's a community issue. I don't want to lay the blame on any particular parents by any means, but it takes a village, once again, to help get these kids back on track and raise them into productive adults. And once again, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fine work done by our officers within the police department. From the time the initial call went out to locating the suspect vehicle, tracking the individuals that fled from the vehicle and take them into custody, everyone across the board did a phenomenal job. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Fred, and thank you, State's Attorney Hanley. I would just first echo the comments that Chief Fred said. The violence that we're seeing in our community right now is out of control. It's absolutely not acceptable. I would also say, as a father, you hear the ages of the folks associated in this specific incident. It's hard not just to be sad when you see how young they are. And what they've gotten themselves into and the havoc that they've wreaked on our community. With that being said, a huge thank you to the Rockford Police Department. You look at the totality of this incident, and you look at getting to the scene, you look at collecting the information on the suspects, tracking down those suspects, and doing that in 30, 40 minutes is remarkable, and a credit to them, Chief Red's leadership, and all of the command staff's leadership at the Rockford Police Department. Inside that, as the state's attorney mentioned, a huge thank you to Rockford Public Schools, especially to Auburn High School and their amazing team over there for the great collaboration and partnership that was displayed yesterday. I really do appreciate the state's attorney's strong stance when it comes to making sure that in his role, he can do all that he is possible to make sure that there's consequences for these actions. We're seeing far too much of this in our community, and there has to be strong, clear, and fair consequences to these actions. When you are running around our community with a gun, wreaking havoc on homes, wreaking havoc on our streets, and wreaking havoc in our schools, that's not acceptable. There has to be clear consequences for this. And I just want to say, again, every resource at the city of Rockford is allocated towards safety, is allocated to a holistic approach to fighting crime. And that means stopping the bleeding and what's going on in the streets. And that also means making sure that we wrap our arms around these young individuals when we have that opportunity to do so. And I would urge anyone who is interested in being a productive part of a solution, reach out to that email that Chief Red provided to all of us. This is a community issue. It's not the chief's issue, the state's attorney's, or the mayor's issue. We're all working on it, but we need everyone else swimming in that same direction. With that, I'll turn it back over to the state's attorney.
Any questions?
Yeah, why exactly do you guys maybe believe that these kids are using guns to approach other people when they have problems rather than simply talking it out or using regular means, I guess? Maybe Chief Red.
I think we could probably attribute the gun violence to a host of things that have transpired over, the past several years when you talk about social media, video, things of that nature across the board. I can think as growing up as a child, it was a rarity that you would hear about guns, but now it's more of a norm than it is, an isolated incident. Okay.
Can I add to that? I think that's accurate. I think when you look at, when you follow the data, and I am not making comments on the current case or individuals, just to be clear. I don't know enough information there. But when you look at the data in totality of what we look at when it comes to public safety, there's a clear root causes that we see. You, more often than not, see trauma in these young individuals. And more often than not, this trauma goes unmitigated. And that trauma now is playing out in our homes, in our streets, and yesterday in a school parking lot, more than potentially. I shouldn't say that, potentially. But we as a community, there's really two parallel tracks, right? You have to get upstream and stop and help mitigate that trauma. Wrap our arms and services around these young people to make sure that they know that they're loved, they're cared for, they have the therapy that is needed when a trauma incident is experienced, and so much more. And then also, we have an amazing police department, and we have to stop the bleeding that's going on to the streets right now. So I see it as that parallel track.
One follow-up to that. So the mayor's 100% correct. But I think one of the parts of your question was, why not try to kick the guy's butt in an alley as opposed to picking up a gun? And as I stand here, I don't know why they're picking up guns more often than they're getting in what you consider an old-fashioned fist fight. At the same time, there are more fist fights, seemingly, in the schools, anecdotally. There are, even the level of violence in those actions, the number of people, anecdotally, there seems to be a level of violence that seems to have been heightened. And I am not an expert on those root causes. I can only speak in a reactive way and anecdotally. So I've just very long-windedly not answered your question. But it is a concern in the sense that, yes, more and more people are picking up guns as opposed to whatever the alternative might be. and not only picking those guns up, firing those guns.
Does your office work to track down where the weapons came from? Like, if they're, is that part of the work that the police department is doing, or the state attorney is doing to find out?
So, yes, I mean, typically that's done on the law enforcement side. Yeah.
Yeah, so with our ATF office here, I do have officers assigned there, and that is part of their job. So especially when we do gun recoveries and things of that nature, we will track the history of those firearms and how, you know, even back to who purchased them, and if they changed hands and things of that nature and it was recorded, we will dig in and find that information.
Is there like a route area where you see most of weapons coming from? Are they stolen? Are they purchased legally and handed off? Or is there any comment I guess you could make on that?
You know what, it's an array. It's an array of things that we come across, so.
The students that were arrested, are they Auburn students?
So I can let you know this. The 2 victims are students at Auburn. The 3 defendants either are current or former students at Auburn. Beyond that, that's 205's question to answer.
There's a lot of detail put into the suspect's clothes, and you specifically mentioned the one suspect not having pants. Is there a reason why that much detail has been brought into this? I can't remember a previous investigation where that was so prominent.
Well, so this case is primarily about identification, right? They weren't arrested in the parking lot, and so thus we've got to put, I mean, it's just kind of what we do. We've got to put those individuals who got out and shot at the car, you know, we've got to have that identification to where they were later found. So that's why their clothing and the identification is so important. It's not the only factor, but it's a primary factor in this case.
Yeah, it was just more more than some other ones that we've been in here.
Well, I'm trying to be as transparent as
I
possible,
appreciate
yeah.
it. Are both Williams and Wright, are they being charged as adults? I know you section off one juvenile and then you name two others.
No, so Williams and Wright are charged as adults.
And you're working on the other one. You want to charge that juvenile as an adult, but you just don't know at this time. You're working through that.
So that's in our discretion as to whether we would make the motion to have them tried as an adult. So I'm not leaning one way or the other. It's just less than 48 hours. That's a really pretty heavy decision that I've got to think about and also get more information on.
Thank you.
Kind of bouncing off of Will's first question about the description, I know it's, not always that 48 hours after something happens, we have all of this information. Do you think that is due to, the police's, quick response, or is it help from the Auburn High School video? I mean, what helped you guys really get all of these details?
So it is the quick response by Rockford. But it's the video, right? The video was put in the police's hands very quickly, and that allowed this case to go forward and be charged. I'm not saying it wouldn't have been solved absent the video, but the video is a huge piece of evidence. And so I would say that I don't like ranking pieces of evidence, but it's certainly an important part of this case.
And that video was just from Auburn. It wasn't from city surveillance cameras or anything like that placed elsewhere.
So, yes. Now, the investigation's ongoing. There could be additional video or other kind of electronic evidence that could be obtained. But right now, it's just the video of the parking lot at Auburn.
Did other surveillance tools help in making the arrest, like automated license plate reader, digging the car, or anything like that?
I don't know that. I don't know if the chief knows.
So I'm going to say that's part, all of that is brought into play. So definitely a tool that we access and utilize.
Can you speak to what kind of work people may do if they email you at this Fill the Gap email address? What kind of things they may get involved with, and what you hope to see happen after they contact you?
So I mentioned it yesterday in regards to the collaboration we have with RPS 205 and recognizing the need that was out there. Prior to Christmas break, 2 weeks prior to Christmas break with RPS 205, we actually began working with some organizations and some churches that are out there to help to get some adults in, provide some additional positive feedback to the youth in the schools, and there's more work to be done. We're actually looking to venture, Mayor, I don't know if you want to take that, or you want to take it? Go ahead, I'll let him take it.
So several weeks before Christmas break, we partnered, as the chief said, Kevin, with number of faith organizations. I don't want to name them all, but YSN Youth Services Network, the Park District. Now I'm failing to remember one, so I shouldn't have mentioned any of them. And what we're doing is we've really, through our discussions and collaborations with Rockford Public Schools, know that there's really two big times that they're seeing increased disruptive behavior, fights and things of that nature. That's from dismissal bell to when they're going out to the buses, huge gatherings of people, that's in the cafeteria. So we started having teams of leaders in our community go out to 5 different schools right now, and they're going out there and they're simply giving an encouraging word to those young people and being additional bodies and mentors out there and partners with the school staff and just trying to build relationships. I think the next step we would love is to get into the cafeterias. And really, that's probably a better time. I mean, we've all been to school. When you're done with school, you want to go home or get out of there, right? But in the cafeteria, you'll have a better time to build those relationships. We're also working on a partnership with Rockford Public Schools as it relates to Handle with Care. It's been done in other places with high levels of success. That speaks specifically to the trauma I mentioned earlier, but making sure that we're addressing that trauma right at the beginning. There's a host of other programs that we are doing in collaboration with the Rockford Park District. This coming Monday, there's a program on the council agenda to open a 12-week camp for individuals. We have Camp Hope, we have Step Up. There's probably about 8 or 9 different programs. But to answer the question, we would love volunteers for that initiative, but also there'll be other initiatives that people can get engaged in throughout the summer months as we're diving into our neighborhoods.
There was a national story a few weeks ago about dads on duty. Was this inspired at all by that?
I would say it definitely spurred further discussion. We had been talking to Rockford Public Schools and really building that relationship, but seeing that really made it show us just how simple it can be, those initial efforts, right? Sometimes we try to make things too complex, and just getting good people in a place to build relationships means the world of difference to our young people. So huge thank you, by the way, to all the volunteers, the faith leaders, and the organizations who have stepped up already to volunteer at those schools. It's making a difference, and truthfully, I've done it a number of times. It's a lot of fun and makes an impact.
What are the 5 schools?
The 5 schools, thank you for asking and me not having this written down. It is Risa, West, Kennedy, Auburn, and Guilford.
And I've been to West as well, and it is a great experience, and it's also a pretty easy commitment. I was in and out in an hour. You fist bump some kids, hold the door, and it seems to be working, according to the principal at West. So again, anecdotally, from witnessing it and experiencing it, it seems to be a step in the right direction. All right, anything else? Thank you for your time.
Motivation at all?
No. Anything else? All right, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, it's all underneath.
You got it?